speaking classes in high school, they always said it was better to start off with a joke, kind of lighten up the mood. So if you could bear with me for my 2 corny GIS jokes. First one is, why do maps never win at poker? Paper maps never win at poker. Because they always fold. And what is the tiniest element on a map? Anybody? A neat one. And with that, we will begin. So, this is a project I worked on for a couple years, along with some other people at Snyder Brothers. Snyder Brothers is a medium-sized, I say medium loosely. They own about 4,000 shallow wells, and they have about 70 vertical Marcellus wells. They're actually getting ready to do their first horizontal wells this year. They're actually just broke ground on their pad. I worked with them for 5 years right out of college, and recently left about 8 weeks ago to work for Mark West. But I've worked on this project and committed to this before I left. And it was a very interesting project, something I could really take pride in getting done. So the title is The Use of GIS to Accurately Determine Permitted Location to Utilize Production Brine Water for Dust Control on Dirt Roads. So what we're going to talk about, is it legal to use production brine to spread on dirt roads? What are the requirements? The traditional procedure that's been going on since for several decades now. And the new plan using GIS. We're going to talk about the collection and organization of historical data, creation of new data sets, collection and process of field data, run analysis, and the final product, and what we actually gave to DEP in the different townships. So is it legal? Actually, yes. Chapter 78.70 is the road spreading of brine for dust control and stabilization. For those of you who I'm sure we've all seen these trucks. Is there a laser pointer? These trucks going down the road. This is actually your spreader bar. There's little holes in the bottom, so your brine or your fresh water, depending on what the truck is, this will actually come out and spread along these roads, these dirt roads, to keep down the dust in the summer months. So what are the requirements? Most of these are taken right from Chapter 78. You can only use production from conventional wells, production brine from conventional wells. You can only spread on unpaved roads or tar and chip roads, by that definition. You have to submit a plan annually, what you're going to do, what the rate you're going to spread at, which wells you're going to draw from, and which townships you plan on spreading in. You need to apply a specific rate and frequency, and that's 1/3 of a gallon per square yard, which is interesting to calculate. And you need to tell how you're going to prevent the infiltration into groundwater, bodies of water, and water courses. And the truck shall have signs identifying the applicant's name and address on the side, and a copy of the plan will be presented with each driver. You have to provide at least 24 hours notice before you can spread on a road to DEP. The truck drivers have to maintain an activity log, and you have to submit that monthly to the two, depending on which counties you're operating in. We actually spread in both districts, the north and south. You have to separate the free oil. You can't apply it within 150 feet of any bodies of water or water courses. You have to be spread by the spreader bar with the shut-off control in the cab of the truck. That way the driver doesn't have to get out and flip it on and off. And you can't spread on roads that have paving and also a grade of excess of 10%, which has always been a problem of determining which roads actually meet that criteria or not. And you can't spread on wet or frozen roads, or during precipitation events or when it's imminent. So that's where the 24-hour thing comes into an issue up here, is because you're going to have to anticipate there's no rain tomorrow, and if there is, you can't spread because of that. So the traditional procedure, since probably the 80s, at least with Snyder Brothers, you would find some townships who would prefer us to use their production brine on their dirt roads. They're really rural roads. And see who was interested. And you would send them a letter. Usually we sent that around January or February every year. We said, are you interested this year? If so, what roads? And provide maps. Then they return those letters with a letter of their own saying, yes, we approve on these roads, and they also sent a map. So I've actually included some copies of the maps and the letters. This is a typical letter we get. This one's for Red Bank and Clarion. They would say, yeah, you can spread on these roads. Now bear in mind, some of these roads are partially paved, some of them run down, there's a lot of houses and things, so you're going to have to narrow this down even further, obviously. And usually, this is the kind of map we got. And it's just a PennDOT Type 5. They highlighted some roads, whether or not that was the accurate, sections that were dirt or not. And that was good enough for a long time. So then we took, sometime around March, we took all the letters, we took all the maps that they presented, we took the plan that we had used over and over again, and we sent those to DEP, the two different districts. They would approve them, send them back, and we would continue on. Now about 2012, we started receiving a lot more scrutiny. They started saying, this isn't going to work anymore. We need to get past that. They actually started field checking the roads and like, yeah, you definitely can't use this section. So we had to step up our game. And so we devised a plan. Excuse me. So we're going to take this, we're going to do this the proper way. We were all pretty GIS heavy at the company at the time. We said, we need to make this the best it can be for our company. So we said, we're going to develop a plan, and that's what we went with. So we went back to previous years. We said, what's all the roads we've spread on as far back as our records take us, so we can compile the major list of any roads that would be possible to spread on in the future. So we got that together. Created that master roads. We put that into a spreadsheet, so we have, with the townships and different attributes. Then we realized quite quickly that our roads database, because these are such, unused roads, a lot of them weren't mapped correctly. And that was because of the analysis we were running, we need to make sure that we had accurate center lines of our roads. So some people took to digitizing center lines of dirt roads as best they could from aerials, things like that. We weren't sub-meter GPS accurate. That company wasn't using any of that technology, so we pretty much did everything we could for the desktop environment. So we created the list of roads. We also corrected the names as far as we put in the names and the township road numbers and that kind of thing. So we have a pretty good data set to begin with. We also collected the municipalities, the counties, and the topographic maps. So here's an example of another PennDOT Type 5. Luckily they give, you can't really read this, but they give the number and the name. Sometimes you get one or the other on the map, the letters. Sometimes they're referred to as one or the other. So we have both those elements inside of the data set. This is what we got. These are all the different townships that we're going to work out of. This is a complete, all the roads. Some of them are a lot more heavy than others. So it wasn't too bad as far as that goes. The digitizing the center lines did take some time. So then we had to, we created some maps, basically 24 by 36 or 24 by 24 of those roads with the names, and had that data set ready to go, or those attributes ready to go. That way people could go out and actually field check. And we did a few on our own as a test run to see if it was possible. We hired some interns, and we charged them with using a GPS, driving around a truck, and they would GPS start and end of tar and chip sections, because that would be the sections that would pave, and they could also go back and correct those and expand those out so we know where they actually stopped. And if the township said, hey, we spread it for X amount of feet, we could go ahead and erase that out of the data set for the next year's maps. We had them collect data on water wells and seasonal drain pipes and stream crossings. That way we'd have a good field check data source to run our analysis. And this is the basic tools we gave them. A notebook, regular sport GPS unit, and some maps of their different townships they were supposed to go to. So they did just that. They collected that data, and then they brought it back at the end of the summer, and a few of us in the office began to process it in the desktop environment. So we digitized the tar and chip sections, and we created a feature class of the cross pipes and the water pipes. So then we also collected a data set, complete data set on all the available water features. What we chose to use was the state blue lines, the streams you get, which is incomplete, but it's a good starting place. We got that from POSDA. We used the water bodies that comes in the different desktops. You can get a data set, base data set from that. We used that. The NWI, National Wetland Inventory, got that from POSDA. And then the water purveyor data set, they chose to do their own, we chose to do our own Act 13 compliance. So we've been collecting water wells in the vicinity of our pipelines and our planned pads. We have that data set to use as well. So then we buffered the center lines of that data, of the road data set by 33 feet, and then we had already downloaded the DEMs for these two counties, the 2-foot DEMs, and we clipped out the buffers from that DEM. That way, when we ran our analysis, it wasn't going to be on the whole county, and it would actually work possibly if we had just the road sections as opposed to the whole county. So once we had that clipped out, we calculated the slope of the DEMs. Basically, it was just two parts. It was either above 10% or below 10% grade. And then we converted that to a polygon. Then we took and we buffered all the water features by 150 feet, and we merged all those into a single feature class. That's kind of what you're looking at there. So then we began to run our analysis. And that's actually a picture of me, several days, with the sledgehammer ready to go. So we exported all the road feature classes to create a final data set, which we call spreadable areas, and then we were going to winnow that down based on our criteria from there. So we erased the buffered water features first, and then we erased the tar and chip sections next. So we erased the sections that were greater than 10% slope. All that took several days, which is longer than it should have because it kept crashing. We let it run overnight, and it came in the morning, and it would go off for like 5 hours, and it crashed. So that was fun. And this is the data set we had left. As you can see, little segments, some wider gaps at this scale, you can't really tell. So it was raw data at that point. It needed to be polished a little bit. So we double-checked the results with some areas that we knew, that we field-checked personally. And I began cleaning up the data. So I went back and unceremoniously, if I thought the section was, the gap was too big, I would erase the points in between, the line segments in between. If it was close, I just filled in the gap to get a best use data set. And then we also had extra steps to meet the criteria. So we had to go and collect an actual brine sample from several wells to represent our entire field. So we actually didn't get to this step until January, February, which was wonderful. So we're driving around to all these rural, wells, climbing on top of brine tanks, smashing through ice in some cases, and collecting a brine sample. That way we can get it back to the lab for analysis. Chapter 78 specifies not the levels, but they just specify what you have to test. So we tested for calcium, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium. We had to report the total dissolved solids. And then we also had to test the average discharge rate per truck, which is kind of hard to calculate. So what we did was we fabbed up a piece of 12-inch pipe, plastic pipe, gas line, cut the top of it, and then we ran that into a barrel. And then we had the driver crank on release the brine. We calculated how long it took to fill up the barrel. We ran that several times. We calculated the average, the average for that truck. We actually had two different rates based on two different types of trucks that they ran. Then we got into the final products. So what we had to do is we had to send one map per township. That goes to the different DEP offices. And that's usually like 24 by 24, something like that, over the topographic map, something they can understand. That's an example of what we sent. And then we had to finish our plan, and we had to send it off to DEP for approval, the two different districts. In the meantime, we actually, and this is something we hadn't done in the past, but we thought it would be useful. We created large-scale maps for our truck drivers and put them in a binder. That way, the truck drivers didn't have any question of where they could spread and where they couldn't spread. We also put that under aerials. We found that they handled the aerials a lot better for reference points than the topographic maps. So this is an example. These they spread from here to here, here to here, here to here, and not in the other sections. And then here's an example of the binder on the right there. So in summary, early. The use of production brine for dust control has been in practice for several decades. Only production brine from conventional wells can be used, conventional wells, so upper Devonian and that kind of thing. And DEP has to review the plans and approve them annually. And of course, the practice is gaining increased scrutiny. I followed up with Snyder a few weeks ago to see where they're at. It was about March when they mailed their initial plan to Meadville and Pittsburgh. Meadville approved it within 3 days. Pittsburgh had yet to approve it. They had gone out, and some of the roads that were dirt, the townships in the meantime had decided to tar and chip. And they're like, what are you showing this? So that's kind of the problem is, if you're not coordinating with the townships, you don't know when a road's going to be paved, and that's going to be excluded.